You're listening to The Authenticity Show, where you get to eavesdrop on great conversations about health, creativity, and the quest for excellence. Your hosts are Carlos Casados and Satch Purcell. This episode is about boredom, which actually turns out to be a very fascinating topic. I mean, we're talking about boredom as a call to action, boredom as potential energy, and some very concrete and useful techniques for building a pathway through boredom as part of your ongoing quest for excellence.
Good evening, Satch.
Good evening, Carlos. I was asking myself a question the other day, which is kind of the inspiration for this topic we're about to get into tonight. I asked myself, when was the last time I remember being bored?
Here it comes.
And I realized it was the day that I asked myself that question. I was standing at the refrigerator door. I mindlessly got up and I opened the refrigerator door to look for something to eat when I wasn't hungry. And I realized it was boredom that made me do that.
Oh my gosh. You know what?
Yes.
I'm really excited to talk about this.
Okay, cool.
It's kind of weird to be excited to talk about boredom.
It is. Boredom and excitement don't seem like they go together.
They don't really, but you and I have talked about this a little, haven't we?
We have, and if you peek behind the curtain, there's some interesting inner workings at play that are very interesting.
Boredom is a revelatory concept. If you think about it, what does it reveal about the person who is bored?
I have noticed that boredom has revealed a lot of interesting things to me about myself.
Have you heard that funny saying that only boring people get bored?
Only boring people get bored. I've not heard that, but I like it.
Yeah, I like it too. I think there's a flip side to it as well, and that is that maybe it's okay to be bored sometimes.
Yeah, I think it is okay to be bored sometimes.
What perhaps spurs on invention is things like boredom.
Yeah. Oh, I totally agree.
Boredom, you get into a circumstance where you start to tinker because you are bored, and it can be a prompt for you to start searching, to look deeper, to be creative with your moment, to perhaps find a way to entertain yourself, which could be a compulsion, right? But that compulsion could lead you to discovering something really important.
Yeah. I remember a math teacher way back in college. Every time she would introduce some new, cool concept, and I say cool very loosely when we're talking about algebra, she would often say that, see, people, you have to understand, these mathematicians, hundreds and hundreds of years ago, were bored out of their minds. They had nothing to do. So they sat down and they figured out these formulas. So, boredom, the way I see it, and I'm sure the way other people see it too, or many other people, is that boredom is like this inner software program that humans have that ensures that we explore our environment and that we discover things.
Yeah, but let's talk about that for a moment, because these so-called math teachers from the past, I've heard the same thing. Different teachers say, "Oh, they were bored back then." How do we know that? It's almost like a presumptive idea that they were bored when not necessarily. Even the word boredom only entered our language, something around 1760s, 1770s, something
Yeah,
like
I've heard that too.
So it's not even really an ancient idea, at least not to my knowledge. We haven't really seen that written about, boredom.
Yeah. Oh, right. And the other meaning for the word bore, right, is to like drill a hole into something.
Sure.
Right? It does kind of feel like that sometimes, like you're getting something drilled into your head, when you're bored.
Right.
Maybe we perceive mathematics as boring, therefore we assume that they must have been really bored if they found that interesting.
But that's just us.
And we're math strugglers, you and I. But what I've noticed about boredom is that it's not the same throughout your life. If you look at your timeline throughout your life, things that we once found boring suddenly can be interesting later in life.
Oh, that's
and
true.
vice versa.
That's true.
And vice versa. And
our tastes change.
And sometimes it has to do with getting started with something. Maybe I don't understand concept A, and I resist concept A. I find concept A to be boring. Then, through circumstances, I discover something new about concept A, Now concept A is a little bit more interesting and a little bit less boring. And next thing you know, I love concept A.
Especially if it helped you in some way or you needed that information to get through something.
Yeah, absolutely.
As soon as you're invested in it, you've got more engagement. Your nervous system is totally involved, and it's hard to be bored when you're totally involved with something.
Yeah. How many people out there have been resisting doing a task that they didn't want to do? And then once they just rolled up their sleeves and started doing it, the next thing you know, they actually had to admit to themselves that they were having a decent time. Maybe perhaps even a fun time. There's actually research that shows that that's true. That if there's a task you don't want to do and you just start doing it anyway, your brain will start to produce happy chemicals. You start to enjoy the process anyway.
Wow, that sounds like a relief to employ. I can think of so many things that bore the hell out of me.
Oh, yeah.
Taxes, for example.
Sure.
Organizing for taxes. Boring.
Yeah.
But I have to do it. And it'd be nice to be able to have some happy chemicals floating around in my bloodstream when I'm doing my taxes. I think I might get to it a little earlier than I would normally.
Exactly.
So what's the secret, you think, to getting those chemicals going?
Well, I think a good starting point is to start to develop a bigger appreciation of our internal environment. There is a term that I really, really like, and I'd like to see this term grow and become part of everybody's vocabulary. And that's the term interoception.
Interoception.
Interoception. Interoception is a word that describes that inner sensation in your body. When you have a gut feeling, we could call that gut feeling interoception.
Okay.
When you feel your heart racing, that could be interoception.
How do you spell that?
Interoception.
Okay.
Interoception.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure I heard that right, because I thought maybe you said introception, but interoception.
Interoception,
Gotcha.
yeah. So,
okay.
So it's the opposite of exteroception. Exteroception is all of our external senses. Sight, smell, sound, that sort of thing. Interoception are those internally generated sensations that we have. We tend not to have as deep of a relationship with those interoceptive feelings.
So it's perceptions of what feelings you have on the inside.
Yeah, it's inner feelings, basically. Yeah.
Okay. So it's a kinesthetic internal component.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Exactly. And all of those things. And, it could be, lung sounds and feeling your heart and your blood vessels and maybe just interesting electrical activity just in your nervous system and in your brain, yet we perceive it someplace in our body.
Now, is this something from neuroscience or occupational therapy? Or?
Yeah. This is something from physiological and neuroscience literature. And there are some words out there, sort of more in the psychiatric or psychological fields, that use the word interoception or interoceptive, right? And one of them is interoceptive avoidance. So interoceptive avoidance would be if somebody is avoiding situations or triggers that cause unpleasant inner feelings, right? Interoceptive feelings, because they interpret it as panic, fear, or panic or fear inducing experiences, right? Because as you and I know very well, it's not really the exterior thing that we are running from. It's the pattern of sensations that it provokes in our body that we don't like. Right. And we're trying to get away from that. Interoceptive avoidance, is an example of how that's used out there, in those fields. There's also interoceptive conditioning, where you learn to anticipate unpleasant, events or situations because of those inner feelings, that gut feeling, that sense of angst inside yourself that, oh gosh, I'm going to be going to a party and there's going to be people there and I'm going to have to socialize, and it starts to, overwhelm the person. Well, I would like to take a stab at coining some new terms with interoceptive.
Okay.
Right? Okay. And one of them is interoceptive exploration.
Interoceptive exploration.
Yeah, this is the idea that we should explore all of those inner feelings in various states, not just negative or positive, but how about even in bored states? How about in neutral states? What is that? What does neutral feel like? What is that like? What does boredom feel like?
Is there such a thing as neutral even?
Well, remember in Buddhist meditation, they talk about pleasant sensation, unpleasant sensation, and sensation that is neither pleasant nor unpleasant. So they don't really call it neutral. It's neither pleasant nor unpleasant, but it's a sensation. So I think it's important to explore interoception, interoceptive exploration. Another term I think that's worth keying here is interoceptive play. And this is actually something that you do all the time. You play with inner feelings all the time, and you've actually helped me with that. You've changed my inner feelings about different things in my life with NLP techniques, hypnosis techniques, or just simply stating something in a different way. That's helped me a lot.
Yeah. Well, in NLP they talk about strategies, right? So a strategy is a specific syntax of auditory, visual, kinesthetic steps that you take towards feeling anything. So if you have a perception of something, liking something, or feeling anxiety around something, or feeling excited about something, or feeling turned on about something, whatever it is, those things are accomplished by a step or two or three in the mind that gets you there. And so in strategy discovery conversations, which we do in NLP, where we're asking a person to identify how it is they're feeling what they're feeling, how they get there, and we get them to specifically remember moments in their life when they felt that, and to replay the steps as finitely as possible, stripping away the layers of what's going on underneath so that they can, communicate and express how it is they feel anything, right? So that you can duplicate that or teach them how to, change it, alter it, restructure it so that they get a better result or a different result. So that's introspection, because you are looking in, and it's also, what did you call it? Introspective play, right? Because you're learning to play around with
interoceptive play.
Interoceptive play, yeah. It is that in a way.
It really is. Sometimes when you've talked about feeling a sensation somewhere in your body, or noticing a sensation that's there, and then maybe noticing that there's a direction to it, and then changing the direction, or maybe changing the shape, or moving it to a different part of the body, that's play. Yeah, that's playing with the ball, move it around.
Internal kinesthetic proprioceptive sensations.
Yeah,
as opposed to the meta kinesthetics, like the feelings, the emotions. That kind of thing. Yeah,
it's really liberating and enlightening to realize that a lot of these sensations that we have inside our body that we weren't even looking for, and maybe went years and years and years and never even noticed they were there, are not only there, but that we have more control over them than we realize, that we can play with those things and shape them and mold them if we wanted to. And that's play, and it's healthy to explore those things.
Well, here we are, starting this conversation about boredom. But the deeper we go into the rabbit's hole, the more interesting it gets.
It does.
There's a lot of pieces to this.
Yeah.
And boredom is an awareness of maybe a dissatisfaction. I mean, I've heard that there's three basic types that they identify in positive psychology.
Okay.
Right. There's the prevention from engaging in wanted activities.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Right. And that happens. Right. Yeah. Being forced to engage in unwanted activities. And then there's being unable to maintain engagement in whatever activity you choose. In case of like ADHD or ADD or some other cognitive deficit that can get in the way, right? So those are types of boredom.
Yeah.
But there is such a thing as certain people have more of a boredom proneness. They're more likely to get bored, right? We all know types that, don't like to have certain conversations, or they don't like to sit still, and we call them restless, but then very often, they get bored quickly. They have a hard time maintaining attention, and that's why they're bored. They're not able to subdivide or look deeper or to engage fully with their nervous system in the experience. Therefore, it's much easier for them to get bored.
Yeah.
But also easier for them to get depressed, easier for them to have attention deficit and other things that can happen too.
To get angry. And I read that...
Irritable.
And I read that people that get bored easily have heart disease. They die from heart disease like 2.5 times more than the average person.
Wow.
It's very interesting.
Well, I can imagine being, the whole idea of being hypertensive, imagine being really, really angry and irritated and frustrated and wanting things to change but not being able to. What happens in your body if you just even imagine that for just a second? You
Yeah.
temporarily jump into that feeling. I can feel tension in my chest,
Yeah.
in my shoulders, in my jaw. You know,
Totally,
it's a
totally.
totally different experience.
Yeah. And this is maybe a good time to point out that some of the best things that we have in our lives came because humans were able to overcome boredom and keep working on those things anyway, like our ability to read and write, our ability to do brain surgery and write music. And these sorts of things required the ability to overcome boredom, at least at times.
Right.
You know, I'm sure there were times when a lot of those studies were very fun and very exciting, but there does reach a point where energy's low and we don't want to continue, but we know that we need to have some sort of delayed gratification, and we have to go through the boredom now so that we can be less bored later.
Right. So let's say this, okay? Boredom is an invitation to discover something new.
I agree. Could you say that again?
Boredom is an invitation to discover something new.
Nice. I was thinking of boredom as like a call to action.
Okay.
You know? And I think you got it. From a Chinese medicine perspective, we can certainly apply yin and yang to it because, you know, this is sort of what I like to do. I like to apply yin and yang to everything. You know how in the Tao Te Ching and in Taoist philosophy in general, they often talk about how from nothingness springs everything. From nothingness springs the 10,000 things or the myriad things, right?
Yeah.
Yin is boredom, right? When you're doing the same thing,
Stillness,
when you're
crystallization.
yeah.
Lack of movement.
Yeah, there's not much going on. That is very yin. And the opposite of yin, yang, is action, warmth, activity, you know, interest, these kinds of things. From nothingness springs the 10,000 things. From stillness springs action. Right? When you are still and you become overwhelmed with the sensation that it is time to go do something, that is yin creating yang. And what I like to point out in this is that's energy, that's potential energy. And that energy can be used to do work. And we often go through boredom with the misconception that it is something that is happening to us, rather than this amazing state that is producing energy for us to use instead. And we can redirect that energy. I think of it as the potential energy of a bow drawing back an arrow. You know, that pressure that is created by boredom is drawing the bow back more and more pressure, and you develop this capacity to do work, you know, with that boredom. Yet we oftentimes are too mindless and we don't take control of how we want to use that energy that is being built up by boredom. So if I'm studying something, which I've done a time or two, if I'm studying something and boredom arises in me, I notice the boredom and I recognize it. You have to recognize it. You can't hide from boredom. There it is, right? I like to actually play around with that and say, this is an energy like it's building up in my head, and I'm able to focus it with like my inner lens and burn a hole in the paper that I'm reading. You know what I mean? Like I can use that boredom to sharpen my intellect, to sharpen my concentration. You know, that it's this power, like it's a battery pack that's charging my thoughts and my ability to, you know, to think and solve problems. And so, you know, that's one example, you know,
That's
of how
a
you can use
practice
that energy.
discipline you've developed.
Yeah.
I don't think most people starting off have that, but you are an academic. You've spent a lot of time in school and you've built that upon something. So what was the piece that you built upon to get that?
That's a good question. Because when I was young, I probably spent the first 10 and a half grades of my formal education bored. and wishing I was doing something else, right? Anything else, but first grade, second grade, third grade, all the way up to about through 10th grade.
So you were both forced to engage in unwanted activity as well as being prevented from engaging in wanted activity.
Yes, and I was unable to maintain engagement in said activities.
Satisfying,
right?
thus satisfying all three categories of boredom proneness.
That's it.
In that moment.
I had a lot of interests. I have a lot of interests now. I think what happened was I decided in the 11th grade that I had to become an acupuncturist.
Ooh.
And I knew that if I'm going to become an acupuncturist, I'm going to have to start doing better in school because I'm going to have to get through basic community college level work in order to get to what I really want to do.
Okay, but how did you figure out that you had to be?
How did I figure out that I needed to do that? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah. How did you figure out that I had to be an acupuncturist?
Well, what happened was I had a meeting with a friend of my cousin's who was an acupuncturist. We had this great talk, and something about it got me excited. So I had these interoceptive sensations of excitement. It was an energy building in me, and I wanted to do it so much. It seemed so fun that I knew that I had to get to the point where I could do this fun thing that I want to learn how to do. But I understood that there was sort of a jungle between me and that fun thing. And that jungle was going to be school. And I was going to have to put my head down and get through it.
Okay.
And that was the moment. Please do.
Can I suggest something right now?
Yes.
Because I love where this is heading. Because the question for a lot of people who have a hard time changing their feelings is always, I don't know how to do that. How do you do that?
Yeah.
How?
Yeah.
And what I'm asking you, I think, is revealing that, you found a reason. There's this concept of be, do, have, right? That you have to be whoever it is that has the qualities that will do whatever it takes in order to have whatever it is you want.
Be, do, have. That's
right?
That describes what I did exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you're like, I somehow deeply resonate and I identify with the idea that I'm going to awaken this identity. So you had the identity of the acupuncturist already inside of you that resonated, that said, I am that.
Yeah.
And you stepped into being that. Therefore, it was this almost like you sort of lean forward into it and you're going to almost fall into whatever steps are necessary to get there, which isn't to diminish how hard it was or to say that it wasn't difficult or you didn't have to work your butt off to get there.
Yeah.
But it's to say that at a certain level, you're so motivated to do it. The energy was coming into you and through you to get you to do it, where you might not have had that if you were just doing it for some unmotivating reason, right? That's not really a reason if you're not motivated by it.
I feel like, quoting Roberta Flack, that you just sang my life with your words. That's exactly what my process was.
Yeah.
I wasn't aware that that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, well, we just modeled it.
Yeah, there you
That's
go.
it.
Yeah, you just modeled it. Yeah, it's perfect.
So that's true for anybody who wants to use boredom. Let's say somebody has a strong desire to not be bored by something and they want to get through it. Well, if they can explore what it is that they really do want and find a way of connecting said behavior, boring behavior, to the attainment of that thing.
Yeah.
If they can figure out a pathway through that, like you did, they will find the motivation to then develop whatever, will or efforts that will cause them to be able to burn a hole in the paper with their will.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned earlier. I mean, that's kind of it, is that a lot of people, they just don't find that. And so it's a big mystery is how do people do it?
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting that you're describing this. I've developed a few little inner strategies that I often share with my students that help. One of the things that I tell them is I'm trying to explain to them, and inspire them to study with some gusto, right? One of the things I'm often telling my students is, all right, everybody, like I'll be in class and I'll realize everybody's getting kind of tired. It's after lunch, the focus is going down. I'll say, okay, everybody stop, right? I want you to reach in and grab that dial inside of you that controls your attention span. and turn it up. We all laugh and grab that thing and crank it up the decibels, and we all laugh, right? Right. Crank up your ability to pay attention, max it out, and if you get bored again, crank it up again. You know what I mean? And so I use this metaphor of a dial that's inside them that they can turn up. You know what I mean? But it comes back to that idea that if you know what it is you need to accomplish and what you want to do, you know what I mean, then you can find a few stages in between to help you get there, a few tools.
Right. Yeah. I mean, hey, when you're in love and it's middle of the night and your sweetheart is aching, hurting, got a headache, whatever it is, even though you're dead tired, there's something inside of you that could possibly give you that motivation. You know what? I'm going to get up and make her some tea right now. Or I'm going to, get her a cold washcloth or whatever it is that you do. Because, normally you'd think, like, from a selfish standpoint, hell no, I don't want to get up. I want to sleep. I'm having a nice dream. I'm enjoying this pillow. It feels great. Yeah. But when you have this part in your heart, this love, this identity where you see yourself and experience yourself as this person's partner, then you realize that as you imagine being her, it aches inside to think of her being in pain or her having that discomfort. So the why becomes clear, and suddenly you feel this motivation to get up, to wake up, to get out of bed, to go do whatever it is you need to do to help her. It would be the same if you have a child or a pet or anything like that, because you have already decided your why, and the identity of how you relate to the situation gives you the motivation to do something that's not easy, not comfortable. And to the degree that you can start to identify all these different places in your life where you do these difficult tasks, these uncomfortable things, you start to get used to the idea that you're the type of person who can do difficult things, difficult tasks, in spite of whatever difficulty you accomplish it, because you're the type of person, right? So identity starts to evolve from that practice. It's the grist from the mill, right? That hard work is fueling and smoothing out the process of you becoming more like that. That identity of this person. So going back to the idea of only boring people get bored, it's kind of true, but it's also, it doesn't end there. Like you can become a more interesting person and be less boring and therefore less bored, because you start to find a new identity that opens up possibilities to explore. Remember the idea of maybe it's an opportunity to discover new things. So what could you discover about yourself? What could you discover about your process or what you're doing that could open up a whole universe of interesting things? You could discover how much more powerful that you are that you never realized you were. How much more willpower you have, how much more loving could you be, how much more nurturing and loyal, or all these things that can start to have a what's the word? Not self-fulfilling, but like a self-generating positive feeling. So now all of a sudden the boredom becomes an impetus for you to push through something, which then causes you to realize that you're so much more than that. And the boredom decreases. The boredom becomes less of an issue. Because you start to realize, hey, that's just a trick of the mind, really. How I turn my attention could change my experience greatly. Boredom, I think we would agree, is a trance state. It is. It's a trance state. Trance of boredom.
Yeah, the trance of boredom.
You're listening to The Authenticity Show with your hosts, Carlos Casados and Satch Purcell. Up next, Carlos and Satch continue their surprisingly compelling conversation about boredom and using it as a springboard for exploring the inner landscape. Man, is there anything these guys can't make interesting?
So boredom is a trance, and it's also something that we could recognize when it pops up into our being that's a great time to go, oh, that's supposed to remind me to, and then fill in the blank, right?
Right.
So
Find something interesting.
Yeah. If I feel bored, that's me going, oh, good, I'm bored. That's my signal. That's my signal that I'm disengaging. That's my signal that there's a call to action. That's my signal that my job is to now find something deeper and more interesting that I didn't see before.
Yeah.
I've attended many, many, many lectures, many continuing education conferences, many.
And they were all interesting, riveting.
Yeah, every single one was
fascinating.
exciting from the moment I got there to the moment I got home. Not exactly, right? And the thing is, the longer you've been in a profession, the more infrequently you find something that's really new and intriguing. There's a lot of rehashing of a lot of the same stuff. But I always made it my job to walk away from a lecture, no matter how familiar I was with the material, no matter how many times I've heard it, that it was my job to find something in there that I didn't know before.
New distinctions.
There's something. And so then it became, how good can I get at harvesting something from this very meager crop? You know?
Excellent.
and it became that way, you know? And maybe there isn't anything there. Maybe what I could do is practice my ability to pay attention for long periods of time.
Yeah.
And sharpen my focus. Maybe that's the only thing I'm going to get out of that lecture. Right? But hey, well, what else am I going to do for the next 2 hours? I might as well spend 2 hours sharpening my instrument.
I totally relate to this. You know, I've spent a lot of time taking NLP classes and reading and things like that. And honestly, you know, it gets harder and harder to find, you know, people that I want to spend days with learning that particular thing, because it's rehashing quite a lot. But I do the same thing. I'm just really focusing in on finding new distinctions and zeroing in on something. You know, it could be just even the way something's presented that I might be able to use later, or maybe I can ask a new question in a new way that makes it seem new to my head, you know, to my experience.
Yeah.
And that isn't to say that there isn't plenty for me to learn in NLP. There really is. I'm just saying that, you know, it's not the average teacher anymore.
Sure.
For me, I've just been through it too many times, and it takes more work for me to extract those kinds of things from certain teachers. But as you know, it's a lifelong practice, and I'll go deeper and I'll find folks that have mastered it to a much deeper level than me. That's just my mission, is to always kind of keep looking and find people who can really open up new doorways for me and stuff. That's what it's all about. That's why I love what I do, and I think that's why you love what you do.
Oh, yeah.
And as you teach it, that doesn't mean you can't go to a conference and find somebody who might have something really useful for you.
Sure.
You know,
all the time.
Maybe even a whole new concept that you hadn't considered before. And I love that. Isn't that cool? It's like a little fireworks display that happens in your synapses, right?
Every time we interview a new person on this show.
Yeah. Right.
I walk away with multiple nuggets, multiple gold nuggets of things that change my reality or change the way I'm going to do things forever.
It's exciting.
And it is. It's very exciting. And so boredom, I think that here's part of the lesson here, is that boredom can be dealt with by the fact that it's signaling you that you are disengaging and that it's time to open up your senses more.
Right.
And to pay attention a little deeper, to begin to search with curiosity rather than to be there and to remain passive in the situation.
Right. It's a moment of, I would say, broken concentration too, because if your mission is to be vigilant, to guard for something. Let's say you were doing security. How's that any different than being alert at a seminar? Well, sure, it's different, but it's more similar than it is different, because the thing that you have to do in your nervous system is be on constant alert. You know, that awareness and holding that centered, poised, listening quality to your senses. That's true for, you know, guarding a place or
that's a good point.
Doing security.
Yeah, that's a good point.
You have to pay attention.
You're giving me images of fishing right now.
Oh yeah, right.
You know, you have your fishing pole out in the water and you're sitting in a quiet lake in a chair, and it's nature sounds and the occasional bird, and you just have to sit there for hours and hours staring at the tip of a pole, right? Fishing is a form of meditation, and a lot of people don't like fishing because it's boring, and it is boring most of the time. It's really exciting when that tip of the pole moves, but most of the time you're just sitting there staring, one of the first things I do when I notice I'm bored is I simply begin by analyzing the boredom itself. That's one of the first things I do. Oh, I'm bored. Well, what kind of boredom is this? Where's this boredom located? Is this like all the other boredoms, or is this different from the usual boredom that I feel? And sometimes I notice it is a different kind of boredom. Then I start to ask, why am I bored? What is it about this that's boring? Is it this, or is it me? Is it the topic? Is it the person? Is it the environment? Is it the temperature? Is it what I did last night, or what I'm going to be doing tonight? What is the reason that's making me bored? And that's usually where I like to start.
But why do you do that, Satch? I mean, what even drove you to even ask that question? Because it's kind of unusual, right? I mean, how many people sit there and ask themselves, well, what kind of boredom is this? And how is,
I think what started it was that little story I told earlier about being in meditation.
Okay.
And I realized I was bored, but the only thing I was allowed to do while I was sitting there in meditation is pay attention to my body sensations.
Okay.
That's what my instructions were, right? So like, oh, well, I'm bored. Well, let me observe boredom then. What's this feel like? And then so that was the first time that I realized that, it really is just a mixture of different sensations that we interpret with this particular word that we've been taught.
So you happened upon it. You discovered something.
Stumbled upon it.
Realized there was some value in doing that.
Yeah, and then I took the idea and just thought, I'm going to remember this because it affected me. I looked upon my inner landscape and noticed that, there are areas and valleys and peaks and depths that I didn't realize were there. And it was all these sensations and how I've been spending my life reacting, to things that I wasn't even aware I was feeling, but I was feeling them. And so that was sort of the genesis of analyzing my own boredom. I analyze all kinds of internal states now, because of that. But
for the listener, I think that's useful because if they want to explore what's possible, it begins somewhere. Right, it begins with this inquiry, this introspection, right?
Introception.
And introception. There you go, introception. They have to be able to discover what that is. So if the listener's never tried this before, just as a thought experiment, wouldn't that be cool? If you can imagine yourself the next time you get bored, doing some introspection, asking yourself, where did this boredom begin? What does it feel like? Does it have a location in the body? Does it have it? If it began, then where's the ending point of it?
Yeah.
What other qualities are involved in the boredom? Is there any kind of imagery there? Is there any kind of self-talk that surrounds it? Is there a kinesthetic feeling? Is there a tension or a release in the body in a particular way? Does the heart respond to it by pumping faster? Or not? Does the breathing tighten? Does it not? What else? What else could they look for?
Yeah. What parts of my body feel like they want to move?
Okay.
Do I feel like I want to move the backs of my thighs or the fronts of my thighs? Do I want to move my shoulders or do I want to move my hands? And where's that feeling? And where exactly is that feeling? And as soon as you find a location of a sensation, then where's the location within the location? And then where's the location within that location?
Subdividing.
Yeah. And then sometimes to say, okay, I'm going to purposely make a change and then see what happens now. Okay, so I'm feeling bored and I want to make this movement. Let me make that movement. Now what do I feel? Oh, release. Well, what's that like? Where's that? And then start the process.
So the student of mindfulness, whether they're a beginner or a seasoned practitioner, could actually use this technique immediately.
In fact, they should be doing it right now while we're speaking.
Right. Hopefully we're not boring you too much, but
yeah. But we're giving them, something to work with, right? And here's the other thing that I do anyways, when I get bored, and I find this very interesting, right, is to go, well, it's only a sensation. I can ignore it. You know, I mean, just because there's a sensation that I have that's coming from inside that I'm feeling this way, I need to go do something else, doesn't mean I have to listen to it. You know,
can get bored of the boredom.
Yeah, you can get bored of the boredom. I also like to screw with it. You know, screw around with it. Just go, oh, I'm feeling bored. Well, then I'm gonna sit here and be even more still and just see what I do to it. You know, is it gonna get upset? You know, or is it gonna give up?
Boredom is sexy.
Yeah, it is very sexy.
Ooh la la, boredom.
You can play with it. You can tease it. You know, get playful with your
Naughty little
boringness.
boredom. Spank your boredom if necessary, if you need to. I think with boredom, it's true for other things too. Some people interpret boredom as depression, but it really isn't. You know, it can lead to depression. It can be a symptom of depression, an indicator, but it isn't depression.
Yeah.
It's distinctly different. As we develop emotional intelligence, boredom's definitely one of those things we have to cross into as far as exploring what it is. Just like all the other emotions, you know, they can be distortions at some level. My friend Michael Watson, in a seminar that he gave, talked about anger as a distortion.
Okay.
And I hadn't thought about that.
Anger
until
as a
he
distortion.
mentioned it. I thought, what do you mean? And as I was listening to him, he was talking about, he said, you know, imagine even a really nice sound, and you crank up that sound really loud, it gets so loud that it hurts.
Yeah, you can't take it anymore. That's a good point.
And so you're not able to differentiate what that is. So he just asked the question. He said, okay, maybe anger is its own thing, but is it? Ask yourself, what are you really angry about? Is it frustration? Are you disappointed?
Yeah.
Are you feeling, let down?
Yeah.
Are you feeling frustrated? So maybe, just maybe, he was putting forth this idea, and I thought it was worthy of serious thought. Maybe the word anger is just a description for a distortion.
Yeah. Wow.
And that anger itself maybe is more of a meta category, possibly.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's useful to think about.
It's very interesting. It brings to mind the lyrics of that Eagles song where Don Henley sings. In that song, "There's a Hole in the World Tonight," he starts off the song with, "They say that anger is just love disappointed."
Oh yeah, right.
And it's kind of what you're talking about there, or what this is about.
Yeah. Did they violate your rules, and now you're pissed off?
Yeah, and it's distorting some kind of expectation, or some, a distortion. I think that's very, very true.
Are you feeling rage? Is it a violent expression?
Yeah,
anger?
I also think this is not true just of boredom, but all of these emotions. I mean, we're on the topic of all these various emotions, which we could say boredom is one of them, or is in there somewhere in the mix. Yeah. Is that we all too often think of the external object as causing that state of mind or state of emotion in us, rather than looking at the external object as revealing that emotion or state of mind to us. Mm-hmm. For example, you and I have meditated quite a bit, right? Our sound engineer, Oliver, has done a lot of meditation as of recently too, right? Mm-hmm. Many people will tell me, oh, meditation is just so boring, right? And I realize that, no, meditation is not boring. It just simply is revealing the boringness that's in you.
Right.
Just like algebra reveals the boring that is in me. Algebra is not boring. It is showing me the boredom that's in me. Mm-hmm. Certain lectures.
You don't have a reason for being good at it yet.
Yeah, exactly. I don't have a reason yet. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, boredom. It's not very boring. It really is.
It's not. Boredom's not boring.
It really is a fascinating thing to look at, to study, and to explore.
Yeah, not for us anyway.
Not
intrepid explorers that we are.
Yeah.
Did you think that we were going to have this much to say about boredom?
knowing you and I, when we get together and start talking, I figured we probably would.
True enough.
But I wasn't sure how this conversation was going to go, to be honest. I had faith that we would uncover some pretty cool things about boredom.
Yeah, I had a sense of that.
But I wasn't quite sure what exactly or how we were going to get there.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Well, and you know what? The next time I even think about the idea of boredom, I'm going to have a whole lot more to think about.
Me too. You know, every talk that we have like this changes me a little bit. And
too.
this one's going to change me for the better again. You know, boredom, gosh, my old friend.
You've been listening to The Authenticity Show with your hosts, Carlos Casados and Satch Purcell. The show is produced by Oliver Althoen. Our theme music is composed by Oliver Althoen. Be sure to subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. And check out our website, AuthenTicityShow.com. Thanks for listening and have an authentic day.